I was loading the truck with goods at a warehouse in Laredo, Texas, ready for a long trip to the Mexican border. It was a route I knew well, but there was always an element of uncertainty and danger. As I checked the load and made the final adjustments to the truck, my mind was focused on the roads and potential challenges ahead. The day was clear and sunny. Before leaving, I did a final check on the truck's security systems, especially the recently installed surveillance cameras. These cameras transmitted live images to the company's monitoring center, offering an extra layer of protection that gave me a bit more peace of mind. After saying goodbye to my colleagues at the warehouse, exchanging a few quick words about road conditions and the weather, I started the truck's engine, and there I was, on my way. As I left the warehouse and hit the road, I tried to push any negative thoughts aside and focus on the job that needed to be done. The traffic was moderate, and the Texan landscape quickly passed by the truck's windows. Every mile brought me closer to the border, and I knew I had to stay alert for any signs of trouble. The journey was just beginning, and I was determined to reach my destination safely. The trip continued without major incidents. I had already crossed a good part of Texas and was approaching the Mexican border. The scenery around me began to change, becoming more desert-like and isolated. It was a tranquil setting but could also be treacherous. On one of those deserted roads, I noticed a car stopped on the shoulder. There was a man next to the vehicle waving for me to stop. My first reaction was caution. I had heard many stories of drivers being ambushed in situations like this. I slowed down, and as I got closer, I could see that the man seemed desperate. I decided to stop the truck a few meters away, keeping a safe distance. I opened the window and asked if he needed help. He said his car had broken down and he needed a ride to the nearest town. I looked around, trying to assess the situation, and saw no other vehicles in sight. It seemed like an isolated area with no cell signal. Against my better judgment, I decided to help him. He seemed harmless and genuinely desperate, so I asked him to get into the truck's cabin, and we continued our journey. During the first few minutes, he thanked me several times, saying he was lost and needed help. However, something about his behavior started to bother me. He seemed nervous, constantly looking back and to the sides. Then I noticed a second car appearing in the rear-view mirror, coming at high speed. My heart raced. Something was wrong. The man next to me started fumbling in his pocket, and I knew I had to act fast. Before he could do anything, I grabbed my radio and began talking to the center, trying to stay calm. "Central, this is Truck 12. I have a situation here, need support on Route 34 near the border." The man looked at me, realizing what was happening. He tried to grab the radio, but I was faster. I pushed him aside and floored the accelerator, trying to distance ourselves from the car following us. The center responded quickly, saying they were already contacting the police and that the cameras were capturing everything. The chase was on. The car behind us sped up, trying to catch us. My passenger tried to attack me, but I managed to dodge and keep him at bay. Adrenaline was coursing through me. I knew I had to buy time until help arrived. The situation was getting increasingly tense. I knew I couldn't maintain that speed for long, especially with the weight of the load. The car behind us was closing in fast, and my passenger, though scared, was still a threat. I needed a plan. As I drove, I started looking for a place where I could gain some advantage. That's when I spotted an abandoned rest area ahead. I decided that would be my confrontation point. I abruptly slowed down, turning the wheel to enter the rest area. The car behind us had to brake sharply, buying me a few precious seconds. I parked the truck to partially block the entrance, quickly exited the cabin, and locked the passenger side door, trapping the man inside. I ran to the back of the truck, trying to hide and gain some advantage. My heart was pounding, and I could hear my own breathing as I looked for something to defend myself with. The pursuer's car reached the rest area, and 3 men got out, all armed. They shouted something in Spanish that I couldn't fully understand, but the tone was threatening. One of them approached the truck cabin and started banging on the window, trying to force the door. I knew the glass and the structure would hold for a while, but not forever. I moved silently to the back of the truck, trying to find a position where I could observe without being seen. Then I noticed one of the men moving away from the group, possibly to look for me. This could be my chance. With sweaty hands, I grabbed a metal bar from the truck's emergency equipment. I prepared myself, and when the man was close enough, jumped from my hiding spot and struck him on the head with all my might. He fell, unconscious. The other two heard the noise and started moving towards me. There was no more time to plan. I ran back to the front of the truck, trying to draw their attention away from the cabin. They fired a few shots that came close but didn't hit me. I knew I had to keep them occupied until the police arrived. I was counting every second, hoping to hear the sirens in the distance. Finally, after several minutes of trying to stay alive, I heard the sound of cars approaching at high speed. The sirens were unmistakable. The police were coming. They were at a disadvantage and started to retreat. Their car sped off, leaving their fallen companion behind. When the officers arrived, I quickly explained the situation. They arrested the man I had taken down and started searching the area for clues. I was still shaking, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. But at least I was alive, and the threat had passed, at least for now. The police sirens were like music to my ears. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally, but I knew I wasn't entirely out of danger yet. The officers quickly took control of the situation, arresting the man I had taken down and securing the truck and its load. One officer approached me while another tried to talk to the man locked in the truck's cabin. The officer asked me a few quick questions about what had happened while I tried to catch my breath and process everything that had just occurred. I explained how the man had gotten into the truck and how the others had chased us. I told him about the threats and the confrontation at the rest area. As I spoke, I realized my voice was trembling. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving room for exhaustion and shock. The officer was taking notes, asking detailed questions about every move. They needed a clear picture to understand what we were dealing with. After a few attempts, they managed to convince the man locked in the cabin to come out. He was visibly shaken but seemed less aggressive now that he was surrounded by the police. As he was being taken to the police car, an officer from the narcotics unit approached. He had an urgency and seriousness that made me realize this story was far from over. They began to search the truck more thoroughly. It wasn't long before they found several packages hidden among the cargo. My heart sank as I realized what this meant. I had been used as an unwitting mule, transporting drugs across the border. The magnitude of the situation was starting to become clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a much larger operation. The officers continued questioning me, now with more intensity. They wanted to know everything from when I had picked up the load to every detail of my route. I told them everything I knew, emphasizing that I had no idea what was going on. My job was just to drive the truck, and I had no involvement in any illegal activities. Meanwhile, the investigators began piecing together the puzzle. The truck's cameras, which had recorded everything, were crucial. The footage clearly showed the moment the man entered the truck and the entire chase. This helped corroborate my story and rule out any suspicion of my involvement. As the hours passed, more police arrived at the scene. I started to realize that this operation was much bigger than I had imagined. The man I had taken down was being interrogated. They needed quick answers to dismantle the trafficking operation. Finally, after several hours, I was taken to the station to give a formal statement. I was exhausted, but I knew it was necessary. I told my story from beginning to end, not leaving out any details. The officers thanked me for my cooperation and said I could go, but might be called back for more questions. I left the station with a mix of relief and exhaustion. My life had changed drastically in a matter of hours. When I got back to my truck, now cleared by the police, I sat in the cabin and took a deep breath. I needed time to process everything. As I drove back home, my mind was filled with thoughts. I knew I would need some time to recover from this experience, but I was also determined to continue my work. I had learned a valuable lesson about the dangers that could arise on the road and the importance of always being alert and prepared for the unexpected. Although I emerged physically unscathed, the experience left emotional scars. The support from the company was crucial. I was instructed to take some time off to recover and attend therapy sessions to deal with the trauma. The manager assured me that I wasn't in trouble and that the company valued my safety above all else. I wanted to continue, but the story could be very long, so we'll leave it here. If you liked my story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next video.